Have you ever wondered what happens to footballers who dare to speak out against their own countries? What happens when the people we idolize on the pitch, those who are supposed to represent national pride, speak out against the systems that control them? It's not just about losing fans or sponsorships. For some, it means losing everything. Their careers, their freedom, and even their safety. Imagine this, you're standing on the world's biggest stage. Tens of thousands of fans are chanting your name. You're not just a footballer, you're a symbol, a hero, a source of national pride. But then, with one statement, one tweet, or even one refusal to conform, you become the villain. The cheers turn into silence. Your supporters fade away. You become a pariah. This isn't just a dramatic storyline. It's a harsh reality for several footballers around the world. These players dared to speak out, not because it was easy, but because they felt it was necessary. Before we dive in, I've got a quick favor to ask. We're so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and your support would mean the world to us. If you're enjoying this kind of content, hit that subscribe button and help us reach that milestone. Let's make it happen. Now, let's get started. One of the most high-profile cases is Mesut Özil. A prodigy on the pitch, Özil was celebrated for his creativity and flair, particularly during his time at Arsenal and with the German national team. But in 2018, everything changed. Özil spoke out against the German Football Association, DFB, and the media, accusing them of racism and discrimination.
Özil has spectacularly quit the national side. The reason, he said, was racism.
It wasn't just a casual remark, it was a deeply personal critique. Özil, who has Turkish roots, felt the sting of being treated differently. In his now famous words, he said, "I am German when we win, but I am an immigrant when we lose." That statement struck a nerve, and the backlash was brutal. The media painted him as ungrateful, fans booed him, and even high-profile politicians joined the chorus of criticism. For Özil, the fallout was career-changing. He retired from international football, citing the lack of respect he felt from the German football authorities. His decision wasn't just about leaving the national team, it was about standing up to what he saw as a toxic environment that didn't appreciate diversity. Yet even after stepping away, Özil's words and actions remained a lightning rod for controversy. His case was a stark reminder. Even in countries that pride themselves on democracy and freedom, speaking out comes with risks. But the situation is even more severe in other parts of the world. Let's talk about Hakan Şükür, a name that still echoes in Turkish football history. Known as one of Turkey's greatest strikers, Şükür's career highlights include leading Turkey to a third-place finish in the 2002 World Cup. He was a national hero, a figure who united a country around his talent. However, his life took a dramatic turn when he became outspoken against the Turkish government. Şükür criticized policies and expressed support for opposition movements, which didn't sit well with the authorities. In a matter of months, he went from being a celebrated icon to being labeled a traitor. His properties were seized, his family faced harassment, and he was forced to flee Turkey. Today, Hakan Şükür lives in exile in the United States, far from the game he loved and the country he once represented. The price he paid for speaking out wasn't just his career, it was his entire way of life. Imagine going from being adored by millions to being vilified overnight. For Şükür, it was the ultimate fall from grace. And then there's the story of Claudio Bravo, the Chilean goalkeeper who was once hailed as the backbone of his national team. Bravo was instrumental in Chile's golden era, helping the team win back-to-back Copa America titles. Yet, after Chile's failure to qualify for the 2018 World Cup, Bravo didn't hold back. He publicly criticized the Chilean Football Federation, accusing it of unprofessionalism and mismanagement. Bravo's comments sparked a firestorm. His teammates, including some of Chile's most respected players, turned on him, accusing him of creating division within the squad. The media amplified the feud, and Bravo found himself on the outside looking in. The fallout wasn't just personal, it was professional. Bravo's relationship with the national team fractured, and his reputation suffered greatly. But perhaps one of the most haunting cases is that of Ali Karimi, often referred to as the Asian Maradona. Karimi's talent on the pitch was undeniable, but his willingness to speak out against injustice made him a target. In Iran, where football is deeply intertwined with politics, Karimi used his platform to advocate for women's rights and criticize government policies. For his efforts, he faced relentless harassment. Government-backed media painted him as a traitor, and threats against him became common. Karimi's story highlights a sobering reality. In some countries, speaking out against the system doesn't just end your career, it can put your life at risk. These aren't isolated incidents. From Asia to Europe to South America, footballers who dare to challenge the status quo often face dire consequences. And it raises a critical question. Why do they do it? Why risk it all fall when they've already achieved what many of us can only dream of. For some, it's about principle. They believe that their platform, one that reaches millions, comes with a responsibility. They're willing to endure the backlash if it means shining a light on injustices. For others, it's deeply personal. They've experienced discrimination, oppression, or inequality firsthand, and staying silent is simply not an option. But as noble as their intentions may be, the price they pay is often unbearably steep. Ostracism, exile, threats. In some cases, they're even erased from the history books, their contributions overshadowed by the controversies they ignited. These stories force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. In the world of football, where we celebrate freedom, unity, and the beauty of the game, there's often a darker side, a side where speaking out can cost you everything. While we've seen high-profile names like Mesut Özil and Hakan Şükür, they're not the only ones who face such harsh realities. Let's shift our focus to other players whose voices sparked backlash and whose courage came at a significant cost. Consider Romário, the Brazilian legend.
Oof. Romário.
While his story isn't one of exile or loss of livelihood, it still highlights the risks of speaking against powerful systems. After retiring from football, Romário became a vocal critic of corruption within Brazilian football. As a politician, he went after the Brazilian Football Confederation, CBF, accusing it of embezzlement and mismanagement. His relentless pursuit of justice earned him both praise and enemies. Although Romário continues to advocate for transparency, his actions have made him a polarizing figure in Brazil, a nation where football is practically a religion. Now, let's turn our attention to Africa, where political tension and football often intersect. Didier Drogba, one of the continent's most celebrated players, used his platform to push for peace in his home country of Côte d'Ivoire during its civil war. While his efforts were widely applauded, not every player has been met with such support.
You know, that's how things are.
Take the case of Emmanuel Eboué, Drogba's Ivorian teammate. While not as politically outspoken, Eboué spoke about the financial corruption and lack of support for players after retirement. His criticism of the system was a cry for reform, but instead of sparking change, it left him isolated. Eboué's career ended on a somber note, and he later faced personal struggles, including financial ruin and mental health challenges. His story is a stark reminder that challenging the status quo isn't always about politics. It can be about the basic rights and dignity of players. But some players face dangers that go beyond their own careers. Take Iranian footballer Amir Nasser-Azadani, a promising talent who found himself in the crosshairs of his government. Nasser-Azadani openly supported protests in Iran against the country's oppressive regime. His support wasn't just symbolic, it came during a time of mass uprisings. In retaliation, he was arrested and faced the possibility of execution.
Azadani was arrested last month in relation to the killing of a police
The footballing
colonel.
world rallied around Nasser-Azadani, with players and organizations calling for his release. Yet, his case highlights how footballers can become symbols in battles far larger than the game itself. Speaking out in certain countries doesn't just risk your career, it can cost you your freedom, or worse, your life. In Turkey, another player who made headlines for his criticism was Caner Erkin. While not as politically charged as Hakan Şükür's case, Erkin's outspoken personality and his comments on issues like player treatment and club politics made him a controversial figure. His candor earned him both respect and scorn, as Turkish football fans are notoriously passionate and often divided when it comes to issues of loyalty and nationalism. These players, and many others like them, force us to confront the uncomfortable reality of football's intersection with politics. The sport we love, the one we see as a unifying force, is often deeply entangled in systems of power, control, and inequality. It's not just individual players who feel the impact either. Entire teams and leagues have faced backlash for their political stances. Think back to 2022, when Iran's national team refused to sing the national anthem at the World Cup in a show of solidarity with anti-government protests. Their act of defiance drew global attention, but back home, it was seen as an act of betrayal. Reports of threats and intimidation against players and their families emerged, illustrating just how far governments are willing to go to maintain control. And then there's the story of Egyptian footballer Mohamed Aboutrika, a national icon who once stood atop the footballing world. Known for his incredible skill and humble demeanor, Aboutrika was loved by millions. But his career took a turn when he expressed support for Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, a political group that was later designated as a terrorist organization by the Egyptian government. Aboutrika's support wasn't violent or inflammatory. It was simply a statement of belief. Yet it led to his assets being frozen and his name being added to a terrorism watch list. The Egyptian authorities effectively erased his legacy, and he now lives in exile in Qatar, far from the country where he became a legend. Each of these stories paints a vivid picture of the risks that come with speaking out. In some cases, these players simply wanted to draw attention to issues of fairness and justice. In others, they were standing up for deeply held beliefs. But in every instance, the consequences were severe. It's worth asking, why does this keep happening? Why are footballers, who are supposed to represent the beauty and unity of the game, so often punished for speaking their minds? The answer lies in the immense power of football as a platform. In many parts of the world, footballers aren't just athletes. They're symbols of national identity, pride, and unity. When they speak out against their governments or the systems around them, it's seen as a threat to that unity. Governments, federations, and even fans often respond harshly. But perhaps the most tragic part of all this is that the courage of these players often goes unnoticed in the broader narrative of their careers. We celebrate their goals, their trophies, and their moments of brilliance, but we rarely talk about their sacrifices. These players remind us that football is more than just a game. It's a reflection of our world, its beauty, its flaws, and its struggles. And for those brave enough to speak out, it's a battleground for change. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time,